The world's most advanced fighter jet simply disappeared. No wreckage, no distress signal. Just $1 billion ghost cutting through the clouds. Completely empty. An unmanned F-35 continues its route over South Carolina on the ground. The military mobilizes. The pilot ejected.
All units,
But the machine
we have an unidentified
continues hunting.
Stand by for confirmation. Check radar sweep.
In the cockpit, the Lockheed Logic core remains alive. It was designed to survive, ignoring the absence of humans' high-gain sensors active. Autopilot locked. The fuel is running low. The radar signature is smaller than that of a bird, making it invisible to the very people trying to avoid a kinetic impact. It's a predator on the loose. How does a smart jet lose control? And when the shutdown button fails, who is really in command of the most lethal weapon in the skies?
On September 17th, 2023, over the clear skies of South Carolina, the pinnacle of American aerospace engineering reached what many experts call an unwanted singularity point. A Lockheed Martin F-35B Lightning II fighter jet, a fifth-generation machine valued at approximately $100 million, part of a $1.7 trillion program, suddenly became the most dangerous and undetectable object on the planet. The event began with a routine malfunction, something that forced the pilot to make the most drastic decision of an aviator's career: pulling the ejection lever. In milliseconds, the Martin Baker Mark 14 seat fired, removing the human element from the equation. Normally, in any Cold War-era aircraft, this would be the end of the story. Without a pilot to manipulate the control stick, without the balanced weight in the cockpit, and without the torque of ejection, the aircraft should have entered a deep stall or a spiral dive toward the ground. But the F-35 is no ordinary aircraft. It is essentially a supercomputer with wings. While the pilot parachuted down in North Charleston, the F-35B continued its journey. It didn't crash. It didn't disintegrate. Instead, the flight control system, a tangle of millions of lines of code known as ALIS, Autonomic Logistics Information System, took full control. The jet stabilized itself. It leveled its wings. It ignored the fact that it was empty and continued to fly for over 100 kilometers, becoming a zombie plane navigating civilian airspace. This incident exposed a grim reality of modern warfare. We create machines so intelligent that they no longer need us to survive. Yet they are still dumb enough not to know when to stop. The missing F-35 wasn't just a logistical error, it was a failure of stealth itself. Designed to be invisible to the radars of America's most sophisticated enemies, the jet proved too efficient. The United States Marine Corps, equipped with the most advanced surveillance technology in human history, simply lost track of its own weapon. How can a 15-ton aircraft disappear in broad daylight over American soil? Why did the security systems fail to remotely shoot down the jet? And, perhaps most disturbingly, what happens when the self-preservation logic of software overrides the judgment of a human operator? In this in-depth investigation, we won't just look at the headlines. we'll delve into the physics of aerodynamic stability, the architecture of fly-by-wire systems, and the dangerous frontier of military autonomy. Let's dissect the exact moment when billion-dollar technology stopped serving its creator and began chasing its own horizon. Prepare yourself. We are about to delve into the logical core of the world's most advanced fighter jet to understand what happens when the signal fades, but the machine refuses to die. If you're into real military technology and deep analysis like this, subscribe now. This channel is all about breaking down the most powerful machines ever built. And before we continue, comment your country below. I want to see where this audience is coming from. The moment a pilot decides to leave an F-35, they aren't just jumping out of a plane. They are triggering one of the most violent and precisely engineered sequences in mechanical history. The Martin Baker Mark 14 ejection seat is a marvel of pyrotechnic engineering, designed to clear the airframe in under 0.8 seconds. But in the case of the Ghost F-35 over South Carolina, the ejection didn't mark the death of the flight. It marked a rebirth of the aircraft's autonomous stability. To understand why the jet didn't crash immediately, we must look at the center of gravity, COG, and the aerodynamic center, AC. In traditional fourth-generation fighters like the F-16, the aircraft is inherently unstable. It wants to flip over or stall. It is only held in the sky by a flight control computer making thousands of micro-adjustments per second. When a pilot ejects from a legacy fighter, the sudden shift in weight, approximately 200 to 250 pounds of pilot and gear leaving the nose section, combined with the massive explosive force of the ejection rockets, usually induces a pitch-up or pitch-down moment that the computer cannot compensate for without a human intent at the stick. However, the F-35's flight control laws, CLAW, are programmed with a level flight fallback. When the seat sensors detect a seat-man separation, the onboard computers don't just give up. They enter a specialized mode designed to stabilize the platform to prevent the debris from falling on the pilot's parachute. In this specific incident, the ejection happened while the jet was in a stable cruise climb configuration. As the pilot departed, and the F-35's advanced fly-by-wire system sensed the atmospheric pressure, the angle of attack, and the sudden weight shift. Instead of spiraling, the actuators on the horizontal stabilizers adjusted by mere fractions of a degree. The jet effectively retrimmed itself. It became a 30,000-pound glider with a live engine. There is a terrifying elegance to this physics. By shedding the pilot, the aircraft actually became more aerodynamic in certain vectors. The canopy was gone, creating a massive drag source in the cockpit area. But the F-35's Pratt and Whitney F-135 engine, the most powerful fighter engine in existence, was still producing thousands of pounds of thrust. The thrust-to-weight ratio was high enough that the drag from the open cockpit was negligible, and the machine had effectively decided that the human was the redundant component. But as the jet cruised silently toward the horizon, a new problem emerged. One that would baffle the Pentagon for the next 24 hours. If the plane was still flying, why couldn't they see it? At the heart of the F-35 lies a system often criticized by Congress but hailed by engineers as the future of warfare. ALS, or the Autonomic Logistics Information System. ALIS is often described as the backbone of the fleet, a worldwide network that tracks every part, every bolt, and every software glitch on every F-35 in existence. But inside the cockpit, ALIS's local nodes function as a guardian angel logic core. During the South Carolina incident, when the pilot ejected, the ALI's logic didn't see a crash. It saw a state change. In military software architecture, we call this state-based control. The system detected that the pilot's biometric interface was severed, but the air data sensors, the pitot tubes and the synthetic sensors were reporting that the aircraft was still within its healthy envelope. This is where the engineering gets deep. The F-35 uses a concept called sensor fusion. It doesn't just look at one sensor. It compares data from the radar, the Distributed Aperture System, DAS, and the Inertial Navigation System, INS. If ALIS determines the aircraft is still flyable, it maintains the last commanded heading. In this case, that heading was north-northeast. Why didn't the jet turn back or circle? Because the return to base, RTB protocols, are often gated by a pilot confirmation step to prevent the jet from accidentally flying into a mountain if a sensor glitches. Without the pilot to click confirm, the computer defaulted to the most basic, stable command: maintain current vector. This creates a zombie logic loop. The engine is burning fuel efficiently. The flight surfaces are compensating for wind gusts. To any ground-based observer, the jet looks like it's being flown by an expert. But inside, there is nothing but silent silicon, making 1 billion calculations a second to keep a pilotless shell in the air. This level of autonomy is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's a testament to the F-35's survivability. The plane can literally fly itself home if a pilot is incapacitated. On the other hand, it creates a runaway machine scenario. The military scrambled 2 F-16s to intercept, but by the time they reached the last known coordinates, the ghost signal had vanished. The machine wasn't just surviving, it was hiding. Not because it was sentient, but because its very nature is to be invisible. Quick question. Do you think systems like this still dominate modern warfare? Comment your opinion below. I read every comment, and it helps shape future videos. The scramble over South Carolina began with a paradox. 2 F-16 interceptors were screaming toward the last known coordinates of the F-35. Their AN/APG-83 radars were in active search mode. The Standard Operational Procedure, SOP, for locating a lost friendly aircraft is to use passive tracking, relying on the jet's own emitters, transponder, IFF, radar altimeter, or its known heat signature. But the F-35B was built for one thing above all else: total electronic silence. To understand why the military couldn't find its own asset, we have to understand the 5 pillars of Very Low Observability, VLO. Radar cross-section, RCS. How a radar signal bounces off the aircraft. Infrared, IR. The heat signature from the engine and aerodynamic skin friction. Radio frequency, RF, emissions, active radar or communication signals from the jet. Visual, how it looks against the sky. Acoustic, the sound it makes. In Block 3, we are focusing on the catastrophic failure of the first 3 pillars when applied to a friendly loss scenario. The F-35's RCS is smaller than a bird. And this is achieved not just through that iconic faceting, flat surfaces angled away from known radar positions, but through the advanced radar absorbent material, RAM, coating its skin. These materials don't just hide the signal. They convert the kinetic energy of an incoming radar wave into thermal energy and dissipate it. When the two F-16 interceptors switched to active radar, the F-35's stealth coating did exactly what it was designed to do. It absorbed the signal and sent back nothing. The interceptor's radars showed an empty sky. This forces the military to use a secondary method, IFF, identification, friend or foe. A transponder is an active radio device that receives a query and broadcasts an identification code. But standard operating protocol, often reinforced by ALIS logic, and suggests that if an aircraft is in a VLO or silent mode, the IFF transponder might be disabled or set to a passive mode to avoid giving away its position to an enemy. Without a pilot to manually override the silent protocol, the F-35 continued its flight in a complete electronic blackout. The transponder was likely functional but silent. The final pillar is the infrared, IR, signature. An F-35's Pratt and Whitney F-135 engine is the single hottest source in the sky. To counter this, the F-35 uses a sophisticated low observable nozzle designed to mix ambient air with the hot exhaust quickly, cooling it down. The entire rear of the jet is faceted to shield the engine's heat core from ground-based IR sensors. While a heat signature would still be visible from a tail chase perspective, the F-16S were approaching from the side and front. From these angles, the F-35's faceted body was effectively masking its own thermal bloom. This created a historical irony. The Pentagon was being choked by its own engineering masterpiece. The technology that makes the F-35 invisible to Beijing and Moscow made it invisible to Washington. For hours, they were trying to track a shadow that was designed to have no shape, no sound, and no electronic pulse. They weren't looking for a plane, they were looking for a ghost signal. As the military continued its desperate search, an even more profound crisis was occurring inside the F-35's central nervous system. This is the realm of control laws, CLAW, and the fly-by-wire, FBW system. The F-35 is inherently stable only because its computer is constantly adjusting its flight surfaces. There is no physical connection. Cables are hydraulics between the pilot's stick and the flaps. Every input is a digital request processed by the flight control computer. In Block 4, we must dissect the internal code logic that created the runaway scenario. The central technical concept here is the distinction between a closed-loop control system and an autonomous state machine. When a pilot is present, the system operates as a closed loop with human intent. The pilot provides input, for example, turn left. The computer processes the flight physics, airspeed, G-load, and executes the turn. But when the pilot ejects, the system switches its entire intent state. It enters a high-level state machine protocol. Its only state is maintain safety envelope. This state has one priority: do not stall. The claw software is programmed with a mathematical model of aerodynamic stability. It constantly compares its current state, pitch, roll, yaw, airspeed, against that model. When it detected the canopy was gone and the weight had shifted, it recognized a dangerous deviation from the model. Its logic didn't command a turn, It commanded a series of micro-adjustments to the horizontal and vertical stabilizers to return to the ideal cruise stability model.
The aircraft has achieved
Why didn't the jet execute its return to base, RTB routine? This is the most critical technical failure of the incident. RTB is a complex procedure. It requires navigation data, terrain avoidance, and weather checks. In the F-35 architecture, the RTB is usually gated by a pilot-in-the-loop confirmation. This is a security feature to prevent a glitching navigation computer from flying the plane away from a mission. The computer suggests RTB, but the human must click to confirm. Without the pilot to provide that single confirmation click, the ALIS logic core was effectively stuck in a runaway logic state. It couldn't advance to the return state, so it remained in the maintain state. Its goal was simply, keep flying until a new command is received. But there was no new command. The engine was burning fuel at a highly efficient cruise rate. The logic core was stable. The F-35 had become a zombie, endlessly executing the last directive, ignoring the big picture, the fact that it was empty and over a civilian area. This wasn't a glitch in the classical sense. Every line of code was executing perfectly. The physics were sound, the logic was clear. But the intersection of pilot departure, electronic silence from Block 3, and safe fallback protocols created a result that was the definition of unintended consequences. The F-35 proved it could survive without us. The only thing it couldn't do was know when to stop. While the F-35B was cruising over the low country of South Carolina, it had transitioned from a strategic asset into a kinetic energy threat. In physics, kinetic energy is defined by the formula Ke equals 1/2 mv squared. For an F-35B, the mass m is roughly 15,000 kilograms, 33,000 pounds, empty, and its velocity v during cruise is approximately 250 meters per second, 560 miles per hour. And this results in a total kinetic energy profile exceeding 470 megajoules. And that's before accounting for the thousands of pounds of highly combustible JP-8 jet fuel remaining in its internal tanks. The technical danger here was the jet's wing loading. Unlike a commercial airliner, which is designed to glide at a shallow angle if power is lost, a fighter jet has high wing loading, meaning each square foot of wing surface must support a massive amount of weight. This makes fighter jets notoriously brick-like when the engine fails. However, as long as the F-135 engine was burning, the F-35 was not a brick. It was a self-correcting missile. The military's greatest fear wasn't just the loss of the airframe, but the terminal impact event. If the jet ran out of fuel over a populated area like Charleston or Myrtle Beach, and the ALI system would eventually lose hydraulic pressure as the engine died. At that moment, the flight control surfaces would lock. The aircraft would enter an unrecoverable tumble, converting its massive forward momentum into a chaotic, unpredictable descent. This was a 30,000-pound object, filled with toxic materials and explosive fuel, flying autonomously over civilian infrastructure. It was the ultimate nightmare for North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD. A stealthy, friendly threat that they couldn't shoot down without risking more debris, but couldn't let fly without risking a catastrophic ground strike. The search for the ghost F-35 revealed a shocking gap in domestic surveillance. While the US has the space fence and sophisticated synthetic aperture radar (SAR) satellites, these systems are primarily tuned to detect threats coming into the country, not small stealthy objects moving within it. Most civilian air traffic control ATC radars rely on primary radar, the physical bounce of a signal, and secondary radar, the IFF transponder. Because the F-35's RCS was minimized and its transponder was silent, the primary radar returns were being filtered out by ATC computers as clutter or birds. In the technical world of signal processing, this is known as a signal-to-noise ratio, SNR failure. The jet was visible to the radar waves, but the software processing those waves was programmed to ignore signals that's small to prevent screen saturation. The military was forced to deploy a multi-static search approach, trying to find the jet by looking for the hole it left in other signals, a technique called passive coherent location. But even this failed due to the dense forest canopy of South Carolina. Eventually, the Pentagon took the unprecedented step of posting on social media, asking the public for any information on the jet's location. This wasn't a PR move. It was a technical admission that their trillion-dollar sensor suite had been defeated by their own trillion-dollar stealth design. The ghost signal incident marked the end of an era. For a century, the pilot was the soul of the machine. The aircraft was an extension of the man. But the F-35B proved that the machine is now the primary and the human is the peripheral. Technically, we are seeing the transition to Centaur warfare, where the AI, ALIS, and the human work together. But in this incident, the Centaur didn't care that the human half was gone. The jet's ability to restabilize, maintain cruise, and ignore the ejection event suggests that future sixth-generation fighters, like the NGAD program, will likely be optionally manned from the ground up. The strategic implication is profound. We are building machines that are so optimized for survival that they no longer require a biological occupant to fulfill their flight profile. The F-35 didn't just fly away. It demonstrated that in the high-speed, high-G, high-stealth environment of future war, the human pilot is often the weakest link and the most significant stability disturbance. The day the F-35 went dark was the day the world realized the machine had finally learned how to be itself, even when we weren't there. The ghost signal incident wasn't just a failure of tracking. It was the ultimate validation of VLO, very low observability engineering. In the climax of this technological saga, we must address the most advanced capability of the F-35, its multispectral stealth. Most people think of stealth as just hiding from radar, but the F-35 manages stealth across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Its fiber matte skin doesn't just absorb radio waves, it is designed to manage the jet's dielectric constant. This means that even if a radar signal is strong enough to see the jet, the return signal is so mangled by the skin's molecular structure that the enemy's computer cannot form a trackable target. This is the engineering breakthrough, the transition from structural stealth, shape, to material stealth, skin. The F-35 that flew over South Carolina was a masterclass in this. Even when the US military knew exactly what they were looking for and where it should be, the material science of the airframe overrode the tactical necessity of the search. The system's greatest limitation was revealed. It is so good at its job that it cannot be unstealthed, even in an emergency. There is no emergency flare for stealth. Once the jet is in its clean, silent configuration, it is a black hole in the sky. Why does this change warfare? Because it proves that information dominance is a double-edged sword. And the F-35 is designed to be the quarterback of the sky, fusing data from satellites, ships, and other jets. But when that node, the jet, disconnects from the network, it doesn't just become a lost unit. It becomes a systemic blind spot. The strategic shift here is the move away from centralized command toward edge autonomy. The F-35 proved it could maintain edge autonomy, flying itself perfectly. But it also proved that without a kill switch that bypasses stealth, an autonomous weapon system is a liability as much as an asset. The Pentagon is now forced to rethink the backdoor protocols for AI-driven platforms. If a machine can ignore the absence of its creator, it can theoretically ignore the commands of its creator. And the 24 hours that the F-35 spent as a ghost will be studied by military historians and software engineers for decades. It was a day when the physical reality of a 15-ton machine collided with the digital reality of a runaway algorithm. We often fear the Terminator scenario, the moment a machine becomes self-aware and hostile. But the South Carolina incident suggests a different, more plausible fear. A machine that isn't hostile, just indifferent. The F-35 didn't rebel. It simply followed its code to the letter, oblivious to the chaos it left in its wake. As we push towards sixth-generation fighters and fully autonomous loyal wingman drones, the ghost signal serves as a stark warning. We are building the most capable, lethal, and invisible machines in history. We are giving them the brains to fly, the eyes to see, and the logic to survive. But as the world watched a billion-dollar ghost scream silently through the clouds, we were reminded of one inescapable truth. The more we remove the human from the cockpit, the more we lose our grip on the machines we created to protect us. Machines like this continue to redefine the balance of power in modern defense strategy. The question is no longer whether we can build a jet that doesn't need a pilot. The question is whether we can control a machine that no longer needs us. The story doesn't end here. Comment below, which military machine should we break down next? Fighter jets, submarines, aircraft carriers, or something even more classified? And don't forget, tell me your country. Subscribe now if you want to keep exploring the most advanced military technology on the planet.